To whom it may concern, hello. Today we'll be taking a trip inside of Mrs. McNeal's classroom as she performs an English language arts lesson based around Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are. She presents this lesson to her curious and energetic first grade students. Mrs. McNeal certainly knows what she's doing in the classroom because her lessons incorporate all of the 6 facets of language arts. Listening, talking, reading, writing, viewing, and visually representing make up the 6 facets. She manages to fit each facet into her lesson, and there is more than one example for each facet embedded within her lesson. However, I will touch on one example from each facet. Her lesson lasts a total of 60 minutes with rapidly changing activities to make sure everyone is engaged, focused, and most importantly having fun while learning. Listening is something that is ongoing. In her lesson, there was one instance in particular where the students had to listen very carefully. During a review game on the sight words, she would provide the students with clues to guess the sight word. For example, she would say, "I'm thinking of a word with 3 letters. It begins with Y and fits into the sentence, blank are my friend. What is the word?" The students definitely have their listening ears on during this activity. The students in Mrs. McNeal's class also have many opportunities to talk. At the end of the lesson, students share their stories with the class. The students who listen to the stories get to talk with the author to add in, ask questions, or even compliment the stories of their peers. This provides an opportunity for open dialogue between the students, while Mrs. McNeal acts as a facilitator. This phenomenon is referred to as sociolinguistics and is very important among young children as well as older adults. A lot of the examples I mentioned earlier have reading embedded inside of them. For instance, when the children present their compositions or stories to the class, they're actually reading what they wrote. This not only allows them to practice reading, but it helps them become more comfortable with speaking in front of an audience. The students in Miss McNeal's class write with a purpose. In her lesson, students practice writing high-frequency words in order to identify and understand them. They also work together in order to write collaborative stories. A sharing of ideas through writing allows students to expand their minds and understanding of what their peers think. Students make word-sound connections by reading and viewing words. As the students in Mrs. McNeal's class review the beginning, middle, and end of a story, one student uses a pointer to follow along as the class reads. The connections between sound and word become stronger as they view the way the word is spelled, how it sounds, and even how it looks. Visual representation is something that has become increasingly important within language arts. In this lesson, students get to draw scenes from the book Where the Wild Things Are, which allows them to explain their interpretation of the story in a different way. Sometimes language is best depicted through drawing instead of words. It is important to not forget that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Mrs. McNeal does a lot of effective things in her classroom. Here are a few examples. Number 1. She appropriately places her students in the zone of proximal development. She pushes her students comfortably outside of their comfort zone and makes them work a little harder. 2. She allows students to practice the 4 systems of language: the phonological, syntactic, semantic, and pragmatic cueing systems of language. 3. She creates a healthy and productive community of learners. And 4. And most importantly, she's instilling self-efficacy in all of her students, which means that all of her students believe in themselves, their ability to succeed and reach their goals. Overall, Mrs. McNeal designed an extremely functional plan that seems to engage the students in a very positive way. Her use of each facet of language is extremely thought out. She hits on all of them and does so with purpose. If I were a student, I would want to be in her classroom. Here's to a job well done.